Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating paradox in American history. We're looking at a man who was a supreme military commander, a guy who orchestrated one of the most massive invasions in human history, yet who ultimately became America's ultimate guardian of peace. We are, of course, talking about Dwight D. Eisenhower. Our goal today is to break down the sources and see exactly how his time in uniform shaped a presidency defined by post-war prosperity and a really calculated push for global stability.
Just listen to this incredible boast from the man himself. The United States never lost a soldier or a foot of ground in my administration. By God, it didn't just happen, I'll tell you that. It's a really rare moment of boasting from a generally measured leader, but it perfectly sets the stage. How exactly did the commanding general of the victorious Allied forces in World War II engineer this unprecedented era of stability? Because as he pointed out, peace of that magnitude doesn't just happen by accident. It takes serious strategy.
Section 1. Forged in Command. To understand the president who kept the peace, we first have to trace the rapid ascent of the soldier who fought the wars. Born in Texas in 1890, but brought up in Abilene, Kansas as the third of 7 sons, Eisenhower's early life was marked by athletic excellence in high school and an appointment to West Point. By 1916, while stationed as a second lieutenant back in Texas, he married Mommy Geneva Dowd. They'd go on to have 2 sons, John and Dwight, who tragically passed away at just 2 years old. But listen to how his career accelerates from there. He excelled in staff assignments, serving under absolute titans like Generals John J. Pershing and Douglas MacArthur. Then, after Pearl Harbor, General George C. Marshall called him to Washington for war plans. And this just catapulted him to commanding the Allied forces landing in North Africa by November 1942, and ultimately to his role as Supreme Commander of the troops invading France on D-Day in 1944. He was managing unimaginable logistics, massive egos, and quite literally the weight of the free world.
Section 2. The Reluctant Candidate.
So, following the war, that level of success made him a global hero. He served as president of Columbia University before duty called yet again, taking command of the newly assembled NATO forces in 1951. And that global hero status made him absolutely irresistible to Republican emissaries, who finally persuaded him to run for the highest office. It sparked a cultural phenomenon captured in just 3 words: "I like Ike." It was a simple, totally irresistible slogan that really captured the absolute trust and affection the American public had for him. This wasn't just a political campaign. It propelled him to a sweeping 1952 victory over Illinois Governor Adlai Stevenson. The people didn't just want a politician, they wanted the steady hand of a proven commander.
Section 3. Navigating the Cold War.
Once in office, that steady hand was immediately put to the test. Following the death of Soviet leader Joseph Stalin in 1953, Eisenhower faced shifting and highly unpredictable dynamics. His response was this really crucial dual-track approach. He was negotiating from a position of absolute military strength on one hand, while actively using that leverage to reduce Cold War strains and seek diplomacy on the other. He knew the Soviets respected power. A prime example of this working in practice was in 1953, when the signing of a truce brought an armed peace along the border of South Korea. He used the implicit threat of American might to force a diplomatic pause in a hot conflict.
And he took this same drive for practical peace to the 1955 Geneva Summit, where he met with leaders of the British, French, and Soviet governments. He pushed for transparency through a bold proposal called Open Skies. He literally proposed that the United States and the Soviet Union exchange blueprints of each other's military establishments and provide facilities for mutual aerial photography. Imagine the sheer amount of trust that would require. Unfortunately, the Soviets vetoed the proposal, but it demonstrated Eisenhower's genuine, innovative attempts to de-escalate the nuclear threat.
Section 4. The Middle Course.
Just a month after that Geneva summit, in September 1955, Eisenhower suffered a heart attack in Denver, Colorado. The whole nation held its breath. But despite the health scare, the public's confidence never wavered. By February 1956, his doctors cleared him to run again, and he secured a second landslide victory over Stevenson. This allowed him to heavily focus on domestic stability, pursuing what he called a modern Republican middle course. He kept most of the New Deal and Fair Deal programs intact, while simultaneously seeking a balanced federal budget.
But his most complex domestic challenge was the dawn of school desegregation. When the Supreme Court issued its orders, Eisenhower sent federal troops into Little Rock, Arkansas to assure compliance. He enforced the law of the land impartially and with decisive executive action, even as he privately resisted pleas from civil rights champions to publicly welcome the court's Brown v. Board of Education decision. He viewed his role strictly as the executive enforcer of the law, keeping the country stable through a period of massive social change.
Section 5. A chip in the granite. As he entered his final 2 years in office, Eisenhower's ultimate goal was to make a permanent chip in the granite of the Cold War. To permanently ease global tensions, he even hosted Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev at Camp David, setting the stage for a major four-power Paris summit the following spring. The whole world watched and asked, could this upcoming Paris summit finally bring lasting peace? Could they find ways to truly reduce their antagonism? Hopes were incredibly high that these two superpowers could actually find common ground.
But then a sudden international crisis just shattered those hopes. Right before the meeting, the Soviets shot down an American U-2 spy plane right over their territory. It was a complete diplomatic disaster that totally scuttled the Paris summit and re-inflamed Cold War passions on both sides of the Iron Curtain. The granite had not been chipped. In fact, the wall between the East and West only seemed to grow thicker.
Section 6. The final warning.
That late-term failure to secure a lasting summit peace, combined with his deep disappointment in failing to turn the presidency over to a Republican successor, really weighed heavily on him. Preparing to retire with Mamie to their farm beside the Gettysburg battlefield, Eisenhower delivered a farewell address that shocked a lot of Americans. The ultimate military commander, the man who led the massive Allied war machine, issued a stark warning. Guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. He understood better than anyone the sheer momentum of a massive military apparatus, and he used his final moment in power to warn the citizens to keep it in check. Talk about a profound irony, right? It's a really powerful final act of leadership.
After years of cardiac illness, Dwight D. Eisenhower passed away in Washington, D.C. on March 28, 1969. But man, his words outlived him. How do the warnings of this peacemaking general still echo in our modern era? Take a look at the world today and ask yourself if we've actually heeded the advice of the man who led us to victory, only to warn us of the very machine that won it.